Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Thursday night live stream. My name is Clifton, and welcome to Bourbon Bytes. We're not doing bourbon tonight, though, so sorry if I'm disappointing you. You can leave the stream now. Just kidding. We have some really exciting Japanese rice whiskeys tonight, which until today, I didn't really know was a thing. So I'm super excited to get into those. First of all, I don't want to do a couple shout outs to people here in the chat. I saw Fred was here earlier. Fred is asking for Steven. Fred, did you ever hit up Steven on Discord? Because he needs to be here. What's up, Bourbon Baller? Good to see you. Brandon, amazing mod here, keeping track of things tonight. Thank you, Brandon, for tuning in. Brandon's actually a guest on my podcast coming out tomorrow. If you guys didn't know, I launched a podcast a week and a half ago. So if you're not yet following the Bourbon Bytes podcast, it's available wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes drop every Friday. So Brandon is the special guest for this week's episode. It's kind of funny because the topic of rice whiskey actually comes up in that episode. And I'm like, rice whiskey? I've never even heard of that. So it's going to be a little awkward that comes out the day after this stream, but we recorded that before I knew what we were drinking tonight. So just want to precursor that, but you guys tune into that. Don Nishida is here. He said, just for a little bit, aloha, Don, all the way from Hawaii. Let's see. I see Emily Chambers, another mod here. Thank you so much for tuning in, Emily. And yes, make sure to hit the like button because it's going to be a really fun stream tonight. Donnie's like, well, I'm out of here. Oh, because non-bourbon. Oh, Donnie, I know you appreciate other whiskeys. Adriana says, hello. By the way, Whiskey Mountain's another incredible channel. Hello on my phone. Might be lurking a little bit, but want to see what's up with this non-bourbon stuff. Nick Proman is also in the house. Well, cheers, you guys. Thanks for tuning in. And well, now's a great time to bring on our guest. Sam is here. Sam was a guest on a previous stream. So check out the replay of that one. But while Sam's in the house, let's go ahead and welcome our guest tonight. Please welcome Chris Uhde, also from ImpEx Beverages. Chris, welcome.
Hello. I can't get my hand in the screen. How y'all doing?
Wait, hold on. Is this better? There we go. More room.
You'll notice one side's blurry and the other one isn't, and that's just I got my computer.
Is that an effect, clearly. Or is that just like how your camera is?
That's the camera is a reflection of the self, and I'm half clear.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming on. Chris is the vice president of ImpEx Beverages and a bit of a Japanese whiskey expert, I would say. He like shrugged. I was like, he's like, I don't know about that, but
I've drank a lot of them.
He's on Instagram as Whiskey Redhead, so you guys make sure to follow him. I'll put the link to it down below for his Instagram. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
No, thanks for having me. So a couple things: Whiskey Redhead with no E in it, because if you got an E in it, that's going to be a cat. And two, before we even get started, what else are you and Brandon going to talk about on your podcast next week?
So my podcast is a bit of whiskey news and gaming news combined. So this week we're talking about the Lux Row $4 million expansion they just announced. I'm drinking Blood Oath Pact 7, and then we're talking about the new Call of Duty game that just came out, that comes out tomorrow.
Right on, man. Right on. So now everyone knows what they're tuning in for.
Yeah. But he does mention rice whiskey because he actually there's a distillery down in Oceanside, California, that's doing some experimenting with rice whiskey. Brandon, what's the name of that distillery? I can't remember what it was, but yeah, it's interesting. I've never heard of that, at least done here in America, other than like Jim Beam has their brown rice series as well.
Well, San Diego Distillery did some rice whiskey stuff. There's one called Vin in Oregon, and then there's another one that came out of Florida called Whistle. I can't remember what it's called. Whistle something or another. I got a bottle in my office, and I was looking at it yesterday, and if my memory wasn't half blurry, I'd be able to tell you. But it's actually a trend that more people are kind of picking up and going with nowadays.
That's awesome. I've actually never had it, so this is going to be a real treat tonight. I see a comment from Don earlier. He said he thinks he met Chris when he was in Hawaii. Did a tasting with Ohishi-san?
Yeah, so it's funny. So you see in the name there, Don's actually spelled his name correctly, Ohishi-san. So it's you can spell it O-I-S-H-I or you can spell it O-H-I-S-H-I.
Oh, gotcha. So that's like the more Americanized spelling of it, though.
It's either. It's just because it's in Japan it would be written in kanji. Here, let me show you. Mm-hmm. So in Japan, it would be written in kanji like this, and this is, if I can do this, O means big, and Ishi means stone. So his name is Large Stone. Okay. But when you translate that to Romanji, where you write it in, like in our alphabet, you can write it either OH or O or even OO. So it's just one of those things. So on his business card, it says one way, but the distillery says another way, even though it's the same family for 6 generations now. But back to what Don was saying, he did absolutely meet me in Hawaii with Oishi-san, and we used to, pre-pandemic, Sam was watching this, it's going to be funny. We used to like to convene there because it's short for both him to get there and for me to get there, and we could do in-store demos and meet a lot of folks and have a really good time. So our repertoire was to get up early and go snorkeling. We actually have a thing where we've managed to see a sea turtle every time we've been on the island together. So we'd go snorkeling, then we do some rides then we do a demo in the evening, and then we'd go drink beer after that, because he always wants to try different American beers when he's over here. And it was a fun time. So Don, thank you for being there and grabbing a bottle and supporting that, because it definitely helps to justify what were my frequent trips to Hawaii that I can't do quite right now, but hopefully again soon.
I feel you. Don is a great guy. Actually, last time I was in Hawaii, I actually went over to his house and we drank a lot of whiskey. So he's awesome. Steven's here. We were talking about you earlier, Steven. Fred was looking for you. He's here in spirit. He has some tests tomorrow. Okay, well, Steven, good luck on the test. Watch the replay.
Yeah, man. Study hard and drink the whiskey later. But should we go ahead and have a whiskey and
let's go ahead
and dive into
start with the Ohishi sherry.
Yeah, let's do the sherry and the Islay side by side. It's going to be fun.
Okay, perfect. So you have the bottles of these. So if you want to show them so people can know what to look for in the stores.
I do. So I think we're doing the Ohishi Sherry 8-year first.
Yes.
And that is this one. This is what it looks like in the box. And then the Ohishi Islay Cask. I actually don't have a box of it, but they look like this. Same thing. It says Islay Cask finish. And
so tell us a little bit about this. So you mentioned Ohishi-san, which I imagine is the master distiller or the owner of the distillery. So what's their story? I actually have never heard of the brand until, of course, you introduced me to it.
Yeah, so the distillery dates back to 1872, and it's located in a town called Mizukamimura in the prefecture of Kumamoto, Japan, which is in the south. If you were actually to take a latitude line and draw it from where the distillery is, you would hit North Georgia, Tennessee area. It's like same flora, fauna. They got blackberries and blueberries and watermelon, and hot and humid in the summer, and then cool and dry in the winter, maybe one day of snow if you're lucky. And so you get really good barrel contraction and expansion, which pulls the distillate in and out of the staves of the oak. So you get really good maturation or oak influence. Mm-hmm. And that's where the distillery is, like less than 2,500 people. There's nothing there. Like there's no pollution. You can pull the fish out of the river and eat them raw. You can shoot the deer in the woods and eat them raw too if you want. It just is what it is. And it's great. Like the family is historically a shochu producer, and shochu is a distilled spirit in Japan that dates back to 1546. And back then, they started making shochu from rice, and then they moved on to making it from barley, from potato. They use buckwheat, they use soba, they use a whole bunch of different styles to make shochu, but it's just more of the indigenous spirit of Japan as far as distillation goes. And that's what their family historically did. And they used to bottle really dark colored shochus until it was outlawed in the late 90s. And so what we were actually drinking would have been considered to be a shochu back in the 70s. But now it's not, because now for a shochu to be bottled, it has to have a majority of the color removed. The way that they can test it is they actually shoot it with a beam of light, and if it reflects too many photons back or whatever it is, it disqualifies it to be categorized as that. And so
wow.
And that's why
so like it's the opposite of adding color into a bottle. You're like stripping it out.
Yeah. So these are the natural color of the whiskeys.
Our friend Whiskey Mountain says, "LOL, I'm not an expert," but then goes on to drop knowledge like an absolute boss.
Like I said, I've had a lot of them.
That's so cool. So like I said, I've never had a rice whiskey, and I was doing a little bit of, I would say, research, Googling before this. And is it true that in Japan they can't call this a whiskey? They have to call it a shochu?
Yeah, no, they don't. They can't call it shochu either. Otherwise,
right, because the color.
Yeah, so it's not. It just isn't. It
doesn't.
You can't, and it doesn't have to do with the rice. There has been whiskey made from rice in Japan. It has to do with a tax license issue.
Gotcha.
Suntory, originally that was the misconception, is people said we can't use rice as a grain in Japan, but Suntory released a whiskey made from rice, which clearly if they've done it, then you're allowed to. But it's really a tax law issue. In where they are located, if they were on a different island, they would be able to get a tax license for whiskey without much of a headache. But because of where they are, they have to build an entire new facility, and even then, they're not guaranteed one. So they're kind of trying to work on it, but it's been worked on for a while now, and it still hasn't quite come to fruition. But as an export market, it works because in the United States, the way we define whiskey, this hits all the categories, right?
Gotcha. Just getting caught up with the chat real quick before we get into these whiskeys. Aaron says, "Evening all, pouring some I'm always gonna mess up pronunciation. Fukano. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Man, I haven't even drank yet today. What the heck? Well, cheers, Aaron. Thank you for tuning in. Brandon says, the name of the distillery that's doing the rice whiskey is called Oceanside Distillery. I guess that makes sense. They're in Oceanside.
So there's 2 distilleries that are doing it now. Perfect.
Wow, that's awesome. Cool. So let's go ahead. So the first one is a sherry cask. You said it's 8 years old. I know someone was asking me on Discord if it was the 8 years. So it's good to know that this is the 8-year one. So hopefully they're drinking it along with us. So yeah, should we get into this?
Yeah, go for it. You tell me. So this is kind of exciting, right? Because this is a new category for you, and you drink a lot of bourbon, and just tell everyone what you're getting.
Ooh, it's really sweet on the nose. I mean, I think it could be like a bit of the sherry, but it could also just be. I mean, dang, that smells really good. Like, it's one of the best things I love about Japanese whiskey just in general is like I feel like they focus really intensely on like the aromas and like the nosing of whiskeys, and I think this is no exception on that.
Yeah. So as you're enjoying it, I'll take you through a little bit more. So from what I've been made to understand, now remember I'm a white dude from the southeast of the United States, so I can't speak what it is to be Japanese or anything. But from what I've been made to understand when drinking in Japan with friends over there, is that it's more of a balanced approach to everything, right? So you definitely focus on the nose, the mid palate, the finish, but you also focus on things that maybe we don't talk about in the United States. So in the United States, we talk about smooth, sweet, oaky, molasses, cherry, vanilla, dark dried fruits, all of that stuff. But in Japan, they'll also talk about sour or bitter or sharp, or and they'll try to incorporate that as part of the complete experience. So it's not uncommon to see tasting notes in Japan where they mention bitter, even whereas it's something you would never say about a whiskey. Even if it had it in it, you just wouldn't say it. The marketing department would say no.
We just say tannic.
Yeah, you can say tannic. There you go. So you can see where it's a different approach to it, and it's more from being built from the center out, so more spherical in nature, if you will. Mm-hmm. So like with what you have in your glass now, definitely some sweetness. That is all the sherry cask, and we can go in that a little bit as far as the proof that it goes into the cask and what it extracts because of that.
But so was it entirely in sherry casks?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Oloroso sherry casks.
Gotcha. And, I'm excited to try it. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers, man. Cheers. But then you might notice umami as well, and then that little bit of sake-esque quality which comes from the rice.
Oh wow. You mentioned like a sake quality. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's really my experience with, rice spirit is sake. Donnie asked a good question. He said, is shochu in Japan similar to soju in Korean? Because I've had soju. I don't think I've had shochu.
Yeah. So there's similarities there, but it is different as well. So Korean soju is more akin to vodka, if you will. Like it can be distilled at a super high proof and like on a massive industrial scale with refractor stills and just kind of blazing it out. That's why it can be at the price it is. And with shochu, they're actually governed by different regions and different geographic indications. So like the Kuma Shochu region is a global recognized region where only 28 distilleries exist, and they have to follow certain rules to be part of the Kuma Shochu region. So like, for an example, this is all made with locally grown rice. Everything that's in the glass came from around the distillery. Oisan grows 30% of it himself, and the other 70% comes from local farmers. And if you go to another island like Iki Island, IKI, they will use typically 2/3 barley and 1/3 rice, and that's what their indication is for what they're making for their shochu. And it's a lot of times it'll be there is, I think there a lot of times it's pot distilled, and they'll use reduced pressure pot distillation and regular pressure pot distillation, which is technology that you don't really think about outside of their world. So reduced pressure distillation is where they actually create a vacuum inside the still, and it lowers the vaporization point of the ethanol, so you get more of the floral notes, more of the aromatics, and you don't have to heat the spirit up so high to harvest the ethanol off of it, or heat the wash up so high to harvest the ethanol off of it. So they're not far apart from each other, but they're also kind of not the same, if you will. Soju is more of a cross between shochu and like an industrial distilled vodka, whereas shochu is more of a craft product that's done by 850 distilleries in Japan that all have their own rules that they follow for their regions.
Gotcha. I was just checking Instagram. I put a poll up asking if anyone has ever tried rice whiskey before. Apparently 82% of y'all have tried it before. So I'm sorry, I'm the only one that's not tried rice whiskey before. But I guess I would describe, if I were to describe this to someone like me that didn't really know what to expect, it's so similar to sake in terms of flavor. It's like if you put sake in oak and then you amped up the proof by like a lot. Like to me, it has that same sweetness, that same, like you said, umami kind of flavor. Like it's got the richness of that, but it's like with the oak, takes it to a whole new level. I'm a big fan of that one.
Oh, thanks. Well, let's hope you go across all four, because the other thing about this type of distillation, these type of whiskeys, is that they are basically the Skittles of whiskey. Within this one category, you get all different types of flavors depending on the cask, depending on who made it. Like it's kind of a fun new Wild West, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Who was the guy that said they were out? It's like, it's not bourbon, I'm out.
It was a couple people, but they stuck around. They're still here. So it was Donnie and Brandon.
So what we say, Donnie and Brandon, is you're knocking out bourbon, right? Because bourbon's great. Like I'm from the Southeast. I love it. It's a delicious spirit. So don't try to out bourbon. Let bourbon be what it is and expand what whiskey can be. And that's what these are supposed to do, right? Like Scotch is Scotch, bourbon is bourbon. You got your rye whiskeys, like just expand that pie of what whiskey can be and have some fun with it. And then I think that's the way to kind of look at it.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, that's kind of what I've done with my channel. I mean, I started out just doing bourbon, but I love trying new things. It's always been something I just in general, like with food, whiskey, whatever. So to me, I get excited about trying new things. That's why I really haven't done too much Japanese whiskey in general on this channel. But now I'm getting a little excited. Maybe I should do more some Japanese whiskey, because now I'm wondering how much impact the actual sherry oak had on it, and I think we'll find out with this next one. Because this next one, if you have the bottle of that you want to show, it's Islay casks.
Yeah, so here we go. Islay cask.
Donnie says we were just teasing. I know, Donnie, I know.
So this is the whiskey, and it's a Islay cask finish. And just real quick back to bourbon. Like bourbon's always changing as well. So you can do a million shows about bourbon and have some fun with it, because it's always like it's different 10 years ago than what it is now. It'll be different in 5 years. But this Islay cask, so what it is, it's a finish. So we are 6 to 7 years in sherry and brandy casks. And then the last 1 to 2 years are in ex-Islay cask. So basically the cask held an Islay whiskey in it for X amount of time. That whiskey was removed, and the residual of that smoky Islay whiskey is left into the cask for this whiskey to be matured in. So when you pick it up and you nose it,
it's far less sweet.
It's far less sweet. That's right. It's just slightly bitter.
There you go. I was gonna say it's not smoky in like a peaty way. To me, it's like almost like a little, I guess, ashy is the way that I would describe it. It's like a campfire that's just been put out.
Yeah, now taste it. And then you get more of the ash, and then
I was about to say that's very ashy, but not in a bad way.
But then on the finish, the smoke comes back in, and then you get like this nice toasted marshmallow note. Like roasted marshmallows, you get a little bit of marzipan.
Don't tempt me with that. These guys know that's my favorite note in a whiskey. Toasted.
Is that right?
Yeah, it is.
Oh,
yeah. Especially like the people that are doing like toasted barrel releases, like Michter's toasted barrel. Oh my god, I love toasted marshmallow in a whiskey. I do. I absolutely. That's so different. And you said the only difference is that this is aged in addition to the sherry or the brandy that it starts at. It's finished in an Islay cask. Yeah, and it impacts the flavor that much.
Same guy, same distillation style, same fermentation style. Everything's the same. The only difference is that it's a combination of sherry and brandy, and finish says lasts 12 to 24 months in the Islay cask.
I'm just so shocked that it took on so much of that flavor. It doesn't take on, I would say, for people that are like, because there are people here that are scared of peat. I don't think it tastes peaty. It takes more of the smoky and the, I guess, ashy kind of note, which is a note that I do enjoy on peated scotches.
This is the segue drug. Clifton.
Yeah.
This is like,
yeah, it definitely is a good way to ease yourself into it. I saw a couple questions come in. One's about Fukano. Fukano, is that right?
Fukano.
I'm pronouncing I'm putting the accent on the
right. No, good.
But we'll get onto that. Aaron, I'll save your question for when we get onto that whiskey. Fred's asking how do I feel about rice whiskeys from Okinawa? I have no idea, Fred. So I imagine that's a question for this guy. I bought one and compared it to these two, and I feel like I can taste the black koji, and I don't.
He's so Fred knows what he's talking about. So all right, I'll take you through it.
Okay.
Well, I tell you what, Fred, is there another question you want to do first? Because Fred's questions is a pretty extensive rabbit hole we're going to go down, which we're going to absolutely do. But is there another one you want to do before we get to this one? Because this is like a long statement.
You know what? Now might be a good time for this one, only because it'll be a good segue once that's done to get into Aaron's question about the Fukanos.
Okay, perfect. So, like I said, Fred knows what he's talking about. So these whiskeys are fermented in a different way. So when you go to make whiskey, let's just take it all the way back to the beginning. Everyone thinks that when you go to make whiskeys, you take a grain, you pitch a yeast to it, and you ferment it, and then you're done. Which is true, but it's not exactly the way it works, because the yeast can't just devour that grain on its own. It needs enzymes to help it digest the grain and actually have a healthy fermentation process. And so in Scotch whiskey, that's what malted barley is. You malt the barley and it creates an enzyme called alpha amylase, which helps with the fermentation process of the starches and sugars within the barley. In bourbon, you do the same thing. So that's why you have malt as part of the grain bill in bourbon. Mm-hmm. Or what they'll do is if they don't have enough malted barley in the mash bill, then they will pitch enzymes to it to help the fermentation kick off that way. Mm-hmm. Or if you hear someone do like a 95 rye, then they probably added some enzymes to it,
right?
To help that fermentation along. Well, what these distilleries do is they use a compound called koji, and it's got a history of about 8,000 or 9,000 years in food. And the lack of really, it's called koji, but it's Aspergillus orgeat, and the lack of translation. There isn't the best thing for an English translation would be a mold, but before you freak out, everybody has had it. Like if you've had soy sauce, you've had a koji produced product. Okay. If you've had miso soup at a sushi restaurant, you've had a koji produced product. Like koji is used in a lot of things. And what some places are now doing, they're actually using koji as they're sprinkling it, like doing dry aging of beef or like a tenderizing of vegetables, because it adds a lot of umami to the cuisine. And what it does for fermentation is it gives you the enzyme that really helps with the fermentation to kick off. So the way that that's right, Aaron's got it dead on, the flavor enhancer. So the way it really works is you take your rice, you steam it, and then you put it into your first fermentation tank. And a lot of those will be underground in clay tanks, or if they're doing more of a larger batch, they might use one that's above ground. But then they pitch koji rice to it. So actually, I'm sorry, you got to go back before. You take steamed rice, you put it into your koji room, and you sprinkle koji seed on it. You let it sit for 40 hours, and that causes the koji to sprout, and it gives you the Aspergillus orgeat, the enzyme you need for that healthy fermentation. Then you take that koji rice and you put it into a fermentation tank, and you add some yeast to it, and then you let that sit for 7 days, and that gives you your starter, which is your moromi. The same thing. Sake is the same way. Mm. And so after 7 days, you have your moromi, or your primary fermentation. You will take that, and then you will move it over into a much larger fermentation tank, add a lot more steamed rice and a lot more water, or you can add barley, you can add whatever grain you want. And then that starter will help to consume the steamed rice that you've added, and then you let that sit for another 14 days. So fermentation time on these whiskeys is 21 plus days. Take it from 0% all the way up to about 18% alcohol by volume. And then they'll run it through the still. So what I think it was Fred, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what Fred was talking about is black koji. And in Kumamoto, they use white koji. Sake, they'll use yellow koji, and then in Okinawa they use black koji because they make a thing down there called awamori. And awamori is like a shochu, but it's a native Okinawan spirit because Okinawa predates Japan. Like distillation actually got there even before it got into Japan back, but it was a thing called the Ryukyu Kingdom. And they use black koji for their fermentation. So what those whiskeys are is basically they're barrel-aged awamoris that are bottled as whiskey for export market as well. And black koji gives you a much more, it has a very pungent aroma. It has a very strong aroma to it. And it's a polarizing one. Some people love it. Some people don't. It just is what it is. And that's what he's referring to there. So if you have that side by side with a white koji whiskey, then it's just two very different things. So he knows what's up. And it's a fun thing to try, right? Like expand the pie. You're not going to like everything. You're not going to love everything. Just expand the pie.
Oh, that's super interesting. And as Adriana said, she's like, he's not an expert, but he can basically give a PhD defense on it.
Just don't Google nothing.
There you go. I see a couple other questions coming. We're going to get to this in a second. I do want to say a couple shout outs to people that are just now coming in. I see Slapshot. Welcome, Slapshot. Of course, Jen Ardolino and Cheech Ardolino. Cheech is an amazing mod, always doing the good work there, telling me to hit the bell button if you're new here, and hit subscribe and the thumbs up while you're at it. Cheers to you, Cheech and Jen. Thank y'all for tuning in, and Slapshot as well. And Rob M. Rob M just said he just started to dip my toes in scotch. Purchased 3 bottles, Dalmor 12, Glenfiddich 12, and Lefroy 10, leaning towards the Islay. Anxious to take the next step in the peat direction. See, that's what we were saying earlier, though. We're encouraged experimenting, taking a step out of your comfort zone. And cheers to you, Rob.
Yeah, those are 3 great whiskeys, by the way, to get to have some fun tastings with and to share with friends. Absolutely. You get the smoke, you get a little bit of sherry cask, and then with the Glenfiddich, you get a lot of bourbon oak influence.
And Fred was saying, Chris is a man after my own heart. Love to nerd out. Thank you. Yep, it came across kind of negatively to me, but maybe I was just expecting the mainland style.
Yeah, you know what, Fred? If there was meant to be one whiskey that if someone real rich and real smart would have figured it out by now. It's all relative, right? That's why there's so many whiskeys. And it's like on any given day, it could change depending on what you've done that day.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of other whiskeys, let's move on to the second one. It's kind of like a 2-for-1. So we had the brand, the Ohishi. I'm so bad at pronouncing things. And now we're moving
You're doing great.
Fukano.
Yeah, Fukano.
So they're both from the same island, correct? But they're different distilleries?
They're from the same. They're 23 miles apart from each other.
Okay. So they're super close.
They're down the street. They're neighbors. Yeah. So, but they're also, so they're from a town called Hideyoshi, and they are 30,000 people in that town. And that distillery dates all the way back to 1823, when there's 7 generations, when however many generations ago, the Fukano-san of that time came. He was buying rice for the Fukuoka government, and got down there and said, you know, this place is beautiful. I'm out. And he packed up his family and he left and he moved down there. And by the way, one of the things I like to do, and this is important, is you know, I like to blend them as well. So always, like if you guys,
I saved a little bit of those left, so we'll do that at the end. I'll do a blend. I
mean, just, you know, just for fun, right? Like it's one thing with whiskey is it doesn't have to be like, it's always fun to just mess around with it and take it and blend it with some bourbon. Have a lot of fun with it.
So we have 2 expressions of the Fukano. We have a 10-year and we have a 2020 edition. I think it's just 2020 edition.
Yeah, let's start with the 2020. I'll tell you about it.
Let's do it.
So I wanted to give you, and I'm sorry, man, I wanted to give you the 2021, but it is stuck in a boat outside of LA port. And,
so isn't everything?
Yeah.
That sucks. That sucks.
But it's at least we know it's close. So
yeah, that's true. I mean, you're always welcome to come back on another time and do the 2021 edition.
I'm down. What we really should do is, since you're Bourbon Bytes, we should do some 1980 bourbons versus some modern day bourbons and do that.
I've done something similar, but I only had like 1 or 2 samples. But like, yes, do you collect vintage bourbons?
I love all whiskey. I truly love all whiskey. Like it's like, I think whiskey is a very inclusive thing, and it's meant to bring people together. So, and I'm old, so I was able to get a bunch of whiskeys before whiskey kind of hit. So I've got a bunch of bottles from the 1980s open right now, even some from the 70s, and I've killed most of the ones from the 40s and 50s. But
oh my god, you guys! Okay, so you guys don't know this. We talked a little bit before. You're only like 15 minutes from me, so don't tell me this because I will be there tomorrow.
Yeah, man. No, I got plenty of whiskey to stay drunk the rest of my life. It's gonna be fun.
That's the problem. I buy way more than I drink, but I love sharing it too. So
So our next two are that's what it's for, right?
Absolutely.
So
this is the 2020.
All right, so the 2020 is going to be probably the lightest whiskey that we have today. So it is a combination. It's got a little bit of red wine cask in it, and it's a combination of new oak and used oak casks, and it's a combination of different ages as well. It goes from 4 all the way up to 11 years, I think.
Now, in terms of casks, well, you just said that, so it's not like sherry cask or anything. It's just
No.
Okay, gotcha.
No, this is all. So you're gonna think with this one. Think butter, think creme brulee. Think you might get a little bit of rose petal on the nose that would come from the wine cask. You might even get a little bit of raspberries. So it's very soft and light, and this is going to be the most sake-esque of all of them. So the idea behind the Fukano brand is to really explore the boundaries of what the rice whiskeys can be. Every release is different from the other one. Nothing is ever the same because it's always just a few casks. So it's next to impossible to try to do that with an organic product, like with a product of organic origin. And
right.
So it's always just fun, right? Because it's just not like you're not a multi-billion-dollar global conglomerate brand. You're just a few bottles that people who are into it get it and enjoy it, and that's what it is. So yeah. So this one is like, we call it nomiyasui. It drinks too easy, and you drink a whole bunch, and then you get up to go do something. You realize how much you drink.
Yeah, because you said it's the last. It's 40.6% ABV. So proof wise, yes, it's light, but it like you said, it is the most sake. Like I do think it instead of taking the influence from like the sherry or the Islay, to me it's the most bourbon-esque, and I think that's probably because it's, like you said, new oak or used oak. So those are the flavors I'm used to. It has the vanilla. You said creme brulee. It's fantastic note because I absolutely get that, like the burnt sugar on top of creme brulee, but super creamy too. Like it's a whole creme brulee. It's not just the top; it's the whole creme brulee.
Yeah.
That's
that koji again. That's the koji when it goes in and it hits the. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you're
go.
For a guy who's never drank it before, you are tasting exactly what I got excited about the first time that I drank it. So you can see where when I tried these, how much I loved them, and the reason why I loved them was because of that. So
I'm definitely saving. I would love to drink it myself, but I need to save half of this for my husband because he likes sake. So I did not expect these to be so similar to that. So I think he's going to love these too, which means that I probably have to buy some bottles coming soon because I buy the whiskey, he drinks it. But since we're talking about that availability, so with both of these, are they relatively available? Are they nationwide, or are they just Southern or California? Where can people find these?
They're all over the place.
Okay.
They are limited in nature now at this point. If someone goes to our website, impexbeverages.com, and they send us they shoot us an email, we reply to every inquiry, and we'll help them find a bottle as best we can.
Very cool. And price wise, these are all, I would say, what, like $70 to $100, I would say. Or am I wrong? Yeah, I did again my Google research before the stream.
Really, so first off, impexbev.com. I always say beverages because I have it, but impexbev.com. And yes, they start at 80 and then they go up from there. The 10-year historically was about 99. It's going to take a price hike to 109, and there's no way around it. It just is what it is, and we apologize. But shipping out of Japan is tripled what it was even just 6 months ago. And now, I don't know if you saw the news, but they're talking about tacking on storage fees, even though you can't claim your container yet. So that's going to be a little bit of a.
Yeah, I haven't followed too much because I'm not affected by that with my industry. But yeah, I know that's like taking a toll on a lot of people. That's crazy. So in terms of, I'm not going to pick a favorite yet because we got to try the next one. But that's up there. That's actually really, really delicious.
Fukano's fun, man. It's got its own little cult following, as you saw with what Fred said.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. And that was the brand that I think more people are familiar with versus the Ohishi. I'm gonna get these right by the end of the stream, I promise. The drunker I get, the better I am at pronouncing Japanese names. Maybe, I don't know. All right, well let's I'm gonna leave a little bit of that in my glass because I do want to come back to it. But do you want to go for the 10-year?
Let's do it. So this is more in Sam's wheelhouse. So you talked to Sam before, my business partner, and he is a classic. He is very much a classic whiskey guy, and his favorite, I think, is actually the Fukano Fukano 12 are the ones that I see him drinking the most. But this is the 10-year, which would be a higher percentage of new oak and then some used oak into it. And this is going to be more like think a little bit of coconut and just think a little bit of sawdust and
again, it's less sweet than the first one.
Yes.
You know what? I'm almost wondering if maybe I should have raised my glass. I feel like I'm getting some Islay notes, and I feel like that's.
Oh yeah. I totally started my Islay glass is now a blending glass, and
that was the smarter decision. But no, it's still. I mean, it's different enough. You know what? I have enough to. I'm gonna finish this one and put it in that glass. I think that's throwing me off. But some questions while we do that. I saw a question actually really early on. I almost forgot about it. Aaron asked, "Are traditional earthenware pots ever used to age Fukano whiskey?"
So no and yes. We wouldn't use it as age per se. So we wouldn't use it as to create an age statement. So once it's taken out of the cask, we decided to not add any more years onto it. But there were 2 releases called Vault 1 and Vault 2, where some of the casks had been moved to earthenware tanks, and they were left there. And so they stayed in there for a few years while they were just in there, and we used those as part of the components of those 2 releases. So those were golly days. That was a while now. Those were a combination of things that came directly out of the cask and some stuff that had actually been sitting in the cask for 9+ years, if I remember correctly. Because Vault 2 were the same casks refilled back into the casks that had been emptied for Vault 1 into those earthenware tanks. There you go. There's Sam with the 12.
The 12-year.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got the 10-year in a new glass now, so I'm gonna try it again with a new perspective. Because I didn't want to be influenced by the Islay cask. That was a bad move for other people out there that are drinking a Islay cask whiskey. Even if it's not an Islay, Scotch, it still impacts the flavor. So definitely rinse your glass between. Oh, these people are making fun of me because there's are you into rum at all?
Me, I'm an indiscriminate alcoholic. I love all of it.
So Foursquare had one. I think it's officially called Redoubtable, but I was trying to give it a French accent. I was like Redoutable during a stream, and everyone makes fun of me for that still. So I'm, as they know, yeah. Fred even 2 people mentioned the same thing. Yeah, I'm not good with pronouncing things.
Look, don't worry about it. Everyone makes fun of me for using words from. Either making up my own words or using words that I've heard from someone that turn out to be questionable words.
Oh yeah, I don't even speak other languages. I'm learning Spanish just because I go to Mexico a lot. But I'm really bad with I would probably say one of those words that someone teaches me as a joke, thinking I'm like, oh look, I know Japanese. Like, no, don't say that ever again. But Fred was mentioning the hangouts. Yes, so everyone that's a patron that is $10 and up, of course, we're doing our after party tonight over on Discord. So if y'all are not yet a patron and want to be, you can join patreon.com/Bourbon Bytes, and you can also just join our Discord at bourbonbytes.com. Everyone's welcome, not just patrons. But yeah, after party hangout right after this stream. All right, new glass.
All right, okay. So what are you getting?
So where I said before it's not as sweet, I'm getting more sweet now. I think I was being overwhelmed by the Islay cask. It's still not as sweet as the 2020 edition though.
No, 2020 because of that higher percentage of used oak will give you more of the sweetness of the distillate.
To me, it's floral, but not in different than a floral in a bourbon note. Like floral and bourbon to me is not usually something I like, but floral and Scotch or even Japanese whiskey is something that I do like. It's like a honeysuckle, I say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is a very southeastern term.
Oh yeah, honeysuckle. Yeah. I grew up eating this.
Yeah, so did I. It's the best. It's the best. You're walking down the street and when they're blooming,
he's like, we had a bush right beside our house. My friend and I used to try to collect it and make a drink out of it. We had blackberries and honeysuckles growing, and we always made some kind of juice, and we tried to sell it, and no one ever bought it. But we just ended up drinking it all.
That takes discipline. I would just eat the blackberries and eat the honeysuckles.
We ate plenty of them in the process too. Yeah. All right. I'm ready to try this. Cheers.
Cheers. So while you're trying it and enjoying it, I wanted to thank you again for featuring some of our products with Sam a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. He that dude knows a lot about whiskey. And his palate is so that you know, like Sam is the guy. So behind these, you know, I keep saying but the truth of the matter is when this idea came about, Sam was really the guy that made it happen, because he was like, we were talking about it and he says, this sounds pretty cool, go have fun. And it wouldn't have been possible without him just kind of like saying, take the risk and go have fun with it, and which we did. And it took us, like, a lot of people don't know this, but we started in 2014 and it actually took us 2 years to get our first shipment in, between all the logistics and getting everything up and running and done, which is a very long time to ask someone to be patient.
Oh, for sure. No, Sam's awesome. And actually, he and I were talking about having him on again, because you guys have so many brands under your portfolio. I mean, he even mentioned doing like a world whiskey kind of stream where we try something from all over the world. And I absolutely love that idea. So Sam, and you as well, y'all are welcome to come back on anytime. I love that you guys introduced me to things that I would have never tried outside of, being a bourbon guy. I would have never thought to try rye whiskey. Yes. Rice whiskey. No. But man, that one. So to me, that one's a lot lighter. People are telling, honeysuckle. Oh, Adriana, no, she's from upstate South Carolina too. She doesn't live there anymore, but she's from there. So to me, that one's the lightest. And you said the other one to you was the lightest. To me, this one's drinking the lightest.
It's kind of drinking light to me too. I've got the same sample, so I'm wondering. This might be from so full disclosure. This is from a test batch. We didn't have we don't have any Fukano 10. I don't even have an open bottle right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So what we did was it's one of my test batches that I brought back from Japan that we sent you, and so I guess I got to send you another one. We got to do it again.
Well, no, I mean, that's cool to try a test batch. But yeah, to me,
comes in.
I was expecting it to be a little more oak forward, with it being 10 years age dated.
Yeah, so was I. So that's why I'm kind of looking at it, wondering what I'm looking at. But
that means we definitely need to have you on again.
But what's fun about this is you can see. So I would guess this is a test batch that has a little bit more used oak in it and a little bit less new oak, which we would have then tweaked back to putting more new oak into it. Because if anyone in the chat has had the Fukano 10, I'm sure they can chime in and let you know that it is pretty oak forward. The 12 year is like an oak bomb because it's all new oak, but the 10 year is a pretty oak forward expression. But it still is great because it's got all the butter.
Oh yeah, no, it's really good. I think of those two, these test batches, of course, I prefer the 2021. But yeah, maybe like you said, eventually the 2021. That's so confusing, but the one from this year will eventually show up. So maybe that's when we can have you on. And then Sam says, "Love the show. We'd be delighted to be invited on again." Absolutely, Sam. Y'all are always welcome.
The 2021 is going to have a little bit of Manzanilla sherry in it as well.
Oh wow!
So it's got more wine cask and more Manzanilla sherry to flip it on its head a little bit. And then and the 2020 that you're having, that's straight from a bottle. We did have one of those open.
That one.
10. The 10 didn't make it, man. We drank it all. We either sampled it or we drank it all. Like I drink it at home.
So Whiskey and Donuts, which I love your channel name, by the way. They say, beyond making more whiskey from each brand, what is the future of Koji whiskey and the growth of these awesome distilleries?
I hope he can see my shirt representing.
Wait, Whiskey Donuts. Oh, wait, so is this a YouTuber? Who is?
Whiskey and Donuts this is peace. Wait, I did it wrong. Peace, love, and Whiskey and Donuts. He's a photographer, and he's like an awesome photographer.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll definitely have to check out his stuff. Like I said, I've never seen the name in the chat, but welcome. Great question. So
the future of Koji whiskey and the growth of these. So he's caught word of some stuff that's happening. So basically, the future of Koji whiskeys is as such. One is you're going to see some stuff come out of Japan that is of different. It's already here, actually. There's some stuff done from barley. There's the awamori stuff, the black koji stuff. That's also that's a Thai rice, a long grain rice, whereas these are all short grain, locally done Japanese rice. So that's shifted it up. There's some that are done from, I think there's a corn one it's either been released or it's kind of on its way. And then you were seeing it in the Netherlands, I think, are using koji, and actually Whistle Pig did one with their rye. So that
really?
Samurai. If I remember correctly,
that's right. Yeah, I've
Samurai was a rye that was done with koji. And a lot of guys don't know this, but this ties back into Bourbon Bytes because the history of koji whiskey dates back to pre-prohibition in 1892, 1894. a guy named Takamine-san came over to the United States and was making bourbon using koji. And
Oh, really?
yeah, they actually built a distillery in Peoria, Illinois. Everyone thinks Kentucky's the capital of bourbon. Well, it wasn't pre-Prohibition. It was in Illinois. And in Peoria, Illinois, they built a distillery called the Manhattan Distillery that they were using koji to basically convert the grains into fermentable grains. And they were able to yield a 20% higher yield than they were off the traditional malting methods. And the deal he struck was that he got 20% of the extra 20% that they made. And it was a big win. But the company behind it, the Whiskey Trust, they got in some trouble for violating the Sherman Act and a few. And then they also were embezzling money out of the company. So there was a whole to do about that. Plus you had the temperance movement starting to happen. And anyways, it was a whole, you had taxes rise. And so people were buying bootleg juice. But the future of koji whiskeys, to make this probably the longest question anyone's ever had to hear the answer to for such a simple answer.
All good.
The future of koji whiskey is going to be the past, where it's going to be an experimentation of new types of grains, of where it can take the flavors of whiskey to go, and just have some fun with it. So,
very cool. I'm seeing a couple questions about the proof. So I've noticed these are all very specific proofs, like 42.7, 42.8. Brandon's asking the proof of so first question, Brandon's asking the proof of each of these. So the Ohishi sherry is 42.8. The Islay is 42.7. The Fukano 2020 is 40.6. And I don't know the 10-year. Do you know the proof?
That's because it's a test batch. We don't know.
It's a test batch. Okay, we don't know. We don't know. And then the second part of that question from Fred says, is it correct that these are all close to cask strength? So do they distill or bottle or barrel at a lower proof than what we're used to in the States?
You need to have Fred on this show, because I'm telling you, he's sly.
Fred, absolutely. He's actually going to send me an Armagnac flight at some point. I have no experience with Armagnac, but he's sending me.
You have no idea what that's well, there goes your next few paychecks, because Armagnac's one of the last hurrahs as far as getting really old stuff for pretty affordable prices.
Especially here in Southern California, it's everywhere.
Yeah, they are cask strength. So you have it only comes off the still at 44, 45% ABV.
Wow.
And it goes into the barrel at that proof. And what's good about that is, again, tying back into bourbon, the lower the alcohol that you go into the barrel, the more of the sugars of the barrel you extract, which is why they tend to be a little bit sweeter as well, right? Because water dissolves sugar and alcohol dissolves other compounds, which is why in bourbon, the max proof that you can go into the barrel at's 125. You have guys like, Wild Turkey that goes into 107, I think, or somewhere in there. They tweak it out, and they'll do different ABVs because they want that lower ABV, because it gives them that more sweeter style bourbon. Well, at 44, 45 is what these go into. It extracts a lot of the sugars out of the oak. Now, in the wintertime, the ABV goes up, and in the summertime, the ABV goes down. And it goes down more than it goes up. So you expand that out, and the ABV can drop, and it's cask specific. There's not a standard formula for it. So Oisan has casks that are 28 years old that are still above 40% ABV. And he's got casks that are 10 years old that are at 38% ABV. It's really is cask specific. So
wow. Is that the lowest? I don't think I've ever heard of another spirit going into being distilled at that low of a proof. Is that is it because of legality or like taxes? Why is it so low?
Well, they do a single distillation is why.
Okay.
So it's a single pot still distillation. And so they go. And the other thing about this is the koji is actually a wonderful thing for fermentation, because I'm sure you guys have talked about heads and tails, foreshots and feints, and the cuts. Well, there's no methanol in the ferment. So the rice and the koji, when you combine them, there's no peptides. So there's no methanol formed during the fermentation of it. So you don't have anything bad in the distillate. So the first drop that comes off the still is safe to consume.
Gotcha.
And they don't get heavy. I forget what they call them. You gotta have a chemist on, because I'm not a chemist. But when you get into the feints, they can take it all the way down to 10 if they want.
You say I'm not a chemist. Next thing you know, you'll be dropping some chemical compounds
yeah, but those will be made up words. It'll be like the hornswoggle compound or the cattywampus element.
Brandon says the rice whiskey he had down in Oceanside was actually at 118 proof. So they must be distilling it at a higher proof.
They might be doing a double distillation, and they might. And then, Brandon, do you know if they're using a koji process or if they're just pitching yeast? to it to get it there. But that wouldn't have anything to do with the thing. If you ran these through a still as well, you would also get to those higher ABVs. This is more that it's a pot still at a single distillation.
Gotcha, man. I'm just absolutely blown away that I not saying like I discovered, but to me, I discovered a new type of whiskey that I'm a big fan of. And so now in terms of like releases, like I looked at pictures and it seems like each of these have like a lot of releases throughout the year. Now, are they all available here? Like what are some of the other releases, I guess, from each of these?
For Fukano?
We'll start with that one. Yeah, sure.
So Fukano, we typically do. So a few years ago, we were able to have 5 releases, which is the max we've ever done. Most of the time it's 3. This year there's going to be 4, but one of them isn't going to be released until 2022. So the Fukano 2021 edition, which is the white box, we do this every year. And the way you tell is we just do edition. Sorry, my blurry camera. We do it edition 2020 or edition 2021. Very basic, like nothing super fancy there.
Oh, I just realized we didn't show the bottles or boxes for either of those.
We'll do it now. Everyone's here with us.
That's the
Fukano 10-year. Yeah, this is like again, I got to get you one of these. Anyways, we'll have some of this year, and then the 12-year, which I don't have a box of with me, is a purple box, and we'll have a limited quantity of that. Sam was talking about it in the last in the last time he was on, and but there's also going to be a 4th one, and I think it's okay to talk about it. But
you want to wait for his input?
Well, it's not about him. So we did a collaboration with Women Who Whiskey. And,
yeah.
So the genesis of the Fukano whiskey brand was actually done. There's a lady named Chizuru Fukano who's kind of like this badass who was the managing director of the distillery, and she's recently, and she has since retired. But it was more to celebrate her. And so it's a 3,000 bottle release in collaboration with Women Who Whiskey that celebrates Chizuru Fukano that we're going to do in January of 2022, because we just got in, or we are getting in, the Penderyn Legend Women Who Whiskey 10th anniversary, which is also 3,000 bottles that we're doing to celebrate their 10th anniversary. So that club's been around for 10 years. We did this because Penderyn is all, it's women distilled, and the master blender she's like the Jimi Hendrix of whiskey, and she's she's the one who puts it all together. So we did the collaboration with that. And so we don't want them at the same time.
Man, that's awesome. That sounds amazing. Whiskey and Donut says if you can find the Fukano 14-year, buy it.
Those are about $150 a bottle, and if you can, he's right, buy it, because I don't have any more. We don't like Fukano's cagey with the cask that he released to us. He doesn't tell us everything he has, with good reason, because he likes to do surprises. But those were 4 casks that were done, and we released them I think 2 years ago, and they are big. If you like oak bombs, they're massive oak bombs. And,
I do enjoy that.
Yeah, there's something awesome.
Awesome. Well, if you guys have any questions just about Japanese whiskey in general or these releases, we have a few minutes left. Get your questions. I know I missed a couple earlier on, so if I missed your question, feel free to leave it again. Well, Chris, let me ask you. So it's a question I keep forgetting to ask my guests, but part of what I do on the channel is I do whiskey and video games. Are you any sort of a gamer? Do you play any kind of games?
So I did in the past.
Okay.
And I don't now, because I definitely have a problem where, like, if I want to keep my job, I can't do video games, because if I do a video game, I will get completely immersed in it and nothing else matters, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Well, you said you used to. So actually, my favorite games, it started out as with a retro gaming twist. So like old Super Nintendo, old like arcade games, like those are kind of still my like favorites. Is that what you were into?
No, man, I was playing real Nintendo when I was a kid. I'm old. So I was playing Zelda when Zelda came out, and it was awesome. But I love the original Zelda, and I can tell you, like, I got stuck on the water level of Ocarina of Time.
Oh my gosh, water levels in every video game are awful. They're just the physics just.
That cost me a relationship, because my girlfriend was like, "Are we gonna go out?" And I was like, "Not this week. I can't figure this damn thing out." And she's like, "Okay, I'll see you, buddy."
I saw they're releasing. So they have these, like, I forget they're called, like Game and Watch, or what are they called? They're these little Nintendo things. They just announced there's going to be a Legend of Zelda, the original, on that released this holiday. So if you like the original, you need to get that. It's like one of those little mini console things. I forget.
Oh man. I tried a few years ago. They did a thing where it was like 250 games on a thing, and My wife tried to get it for me, and it sold out in 30 minutes, and then they were on eBay and this, that, and the other. But yeah, I love video games. The only problem is, man, like that is a way to burn some hours, and it's.
I'm right there with you. I used to play a lot more than I do now, but yeah, absolutely. Their time sinks, but a lot of times it's like, I mean, at least if I say it prevents me from drinking more whiskey, but I usually drink whiskey while I play games, so that doesn't help either of those habits.
You know what though? Like with the video game thing is, there are very specific feelings I get when I hear certain video game theme songs, if that makes sense. And like on the original Zelda, I still, like, to this day, I can remember where a chunk of the secret passages are, and like the whole Contra, left, right, up, down, up, left, right, left, up, down, left, right, BA select start. It's one of those or backwards. And it was, it was part of life at the time, and it's a part of life that I would not want to not have experienced. So I'm all about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Donnie said NES Classic. That's the one that he was talking about. The NES Classic was the one that came with the games. The one that I just looked up, the one that I was talking about, it is called Game & Watch. It's coming with The Legend of Zelda, the original game. It's available November 12th. If anyone's curious, it's $50. But if it's one of your favorite games, it might be worth looking into. So if you can find it.
There is one video game that I will drop because I'm very proud of this. There's a game called Arkanoid, and used to play it. So it was kind of like, on Atari it was called Breakthrough, but in the actual stand-up game it was called Arkanoid, and it was basically a paddle, and you hit the ball up and you try to break through all the blocks and get to the surface. My pinnacle in gaming was that I beat the game with 1 quarter. I got all the way through it.
Man,
to the end.
You're better than me because I'm really. I say I love video games. That does not mean I'm good at them. I just looked up Arkanoid. I'm familiar with it. I just didn't know the name. So if you guys are curious, it's this one right here. Yeah. I've absolutely played that. I love, one of my favorite things is going to like arcade bars that have all the classic like arcade like cabinets. That's one of my favorite things ever.
So that is one you can finish, and depending on, and you can get, and like the last ones, there's a face and everything, and I did it, and that was cool.
Well, you're probably a much better gamer. You should just run my channel, but we'll change.
No. Everything else I'm terrible at. Like Galaga and everything else, I couldn't get past stage 2. But that was the one thing I don't know. It's just, it had the little swivel doodah. I'd have a beer in one hand and swivel doodah, and the next thing I know, 2 hours had gone by.
Yeah, Zopher knows. Zopher loves like arcade games like that too. So,
by the way, he was born back in 1920. He knows what it's all about. He's seen everything.
No, he's not that old. But Zopher, thanks for tuning in. And I guess everyone, thank you all so much for tuning in. This has been a lot of fun. It's been eye-opening. And like I said, I'm going to have to share the rest of these with my husband because I'm not going to get to finish them myself. But Chris, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on and having Sam on a few weeks ago. You guys are just doing some awesome stuff out there.
We love whiskey, that is for sure. So from us, thanks to you as well. And thank you, everyone that stayed with us on here.
Absolutely. Like I said, new episode of the podcast is coming out tomorrow morning. So make sure you're following me on whatever platform. It's just search for Bourbon Bytes Podcast. You'll find it. Special guest Brandon for that one. Like I said, I mentioned that I've never had rice whiskey on it. Ignore that part because we recorded that before this session. So, all right, Chris, cheers. And thank you all so much for tuning in.
Bye, everyone.
All right, bye.